Welcome to episode 27 of the Gluttons For Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. He's Lepore, I'm Bruno. Thank you so much for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. If you're a new listener and you enjoy the show, we would really appreciate it if you give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube and you like what you see, it would be a big time help if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. All right, everybody. As of Sunday, July 4th, 2021, the Tampa Bay Lightning are one win away from sweeping the Montreal Canadiens and repeating as Stanley Cup champions. It appears that the clock has finally struck midnight on the Habs. We're going to get into all that. We're going to go over what we've seen so far in the Stanley Cup Final, what we're expecting moving forward heading into Game 4 on Monday night at the Bell Center. And we're also going to mix in some Leafs talk as well with some news that dropped earlier this week with Wayne Simmonds and Frederik Andersen. But before we get to all that, it is time to welcome in my partner in crime, Mr. Michael Lepore. How you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, Bruno. A team wearing blue and white is one game away from the Stanley Cup. So smiles on our faces. Episode 27. Shout out. This is a big one. Shout out to Daryl Sittler, who many consider.
Love it.
Yeah. So a player who many consider to be the greatest Maple Leaf of all time, and definitely in the discussion for the greatest player of all time to have not lifted the Stanley Cup. So here we are. It's been a big week. So let's get talking about what everyone wants us to talk about, and that is the extension of Wayne Simmonds.
Oh, yeah. Biggest news in Leafland, everybody. Wayne Simmonds.
Big hockey week.
Never mind the Stanley Cup Final. Never mind the Habs about to get swept. It's all about the Wayne train. No, but I mean, all kidding aside, we will get to that later in the show. Before we get into our first topic, just shout out to St. Jacobs, Ontario, the home of Daryl Sittler. Just wanted to toss that out there. But yeah, love it. Episode number 27. Can't believe we made it this far. It's been a great run, Lepore. So let's just keep this baby going.
Keep going forever.
But let's get right into this, Lepore. So as we all know, the Tampa Bay Lightning are one win away from sweeping the Montreal Canadiens in the Stanley Cup Final. It would be the first sweep in the Stanley Cup Final in 23 years since the Red Wings swept the Capitals in 4 straight in 1998. So our first topic of conversation, Lepore, is this.
You seem excited.
What's that?
You seem excited about this topic.
I'm very excited. I
don't know what it is, everyone. Bruno is going to say something. I'm going to be as surprised as you are.
Here it is. Are the Montreal Canadiens exactly who we thought they were?
Boom. Are the Montreal Canadiens exactly who we thought they are? Well, I guess that depends on who we all thought they were. So I know where you're going with that one, Bruno. I know where you're going with that. Looking at this series, I mean, based on what's happened so far, I was dead wrong. When we did our predictions for this series, I said it was going to go 7, and I thought we were going to get a classic series. I will say, though, there was that thing in my brain that everything that was going Montreal's way was going to continue to go their way. And at that point, who would bet against Carey Price, and not even necessarily bet against him with regard to winning the series, but who would have thought at that point that he was not going to play well? And what's happened in this series is, for those who know me well, know I'm a big Seinfeld fan. Everything is evened out. Like Jerry in the show, the big joke is everything evens out for him. And it seems that everything is evening out for Montreal all at once. Price's numbers were absolutely bananas through the first 3 rounds. Even for him, for that matter, those numbers were actually craziness. And even the biggest Montreal Canadiens fan, I think, can point to a lot going Montreal's way in those first 3 rounds, whether it was stuff they could control or stuff they couldn't control, bounces, games being thoroughly outplayed, winning, injuries to the opposition. A lot went Montreal's way. And again, that's not to take away from Montreal. That's just the cards that were put in front of them. And they were some good cards. Now, unfortunately for the Montreal Canadiens watching these games, a lot's going the other way. We have Price playing far below his career average. Like, he's actually terrible right now based on the numbers. I mean, we can debate all day long as to whether or not he's actually playing terrible, but the puck's going in on him. His numbers are bad.
Yeah, Lepore, he has an .835 save percentage.
Yeah,
in the first
that's
3
crazy.
games of the Cup final.
That's crazy, especially when you compare it to what he was putting up in the first 3 rounds. Like, that is a roller coaster, hitting the top and then plummeting to the bottom. And then just looking at little things throughout the series, like individual moments in the games. And I know sometimes it's unfair to do that and say a game could have went another way, because some people say, well, that's the sport and it's a flowing sport. But man, it seemed like in those first 3 rounds, every time Montreal needed a goal, they got their goal. Every time they needed a save, they got a save. Every time they had a shot, one of those, like, it hits the post and goes in, it doesn't hit the post and go wide. And it was just flowing for them. And that's, it causes people to believe, and everyone started to believe.
Even their breakaways, it seemed like the first 3 rounds, every time the Habs had a clear-cut breakaway, the puck was in the back of the net.
Yeah. And like, you just look at little instances, and now, like, I'm saying I feel bad for Montreal because, again, it's evening out, but like, a lot's gone against them. Like, it seems like they can't beat Vasilevsky even point blank. A lot of times it's just, he's getting a stick on it, he's getting a foot on it. They had a lot of bad luck in the second game. Like, they thoroughly outplayed Tampa Bay in game 2. What were the shots? 43-23. Montreal over the second and third period had 30 shots on goal, and they lost. So like, that's a great performance by the Canadiens in game 2, and they couldn't get a win. And like, the vibe on Twitter after that game I saw from Habs fans was a lot of defeat, because I think they were looking in the mirror and saying, we played that well in their barn and we still lost. Unreal. And those are the ones that hurt the most, and they got you, because if you get outplayed, you get outplayed. You just put your hands up in the air and say, well, we lost. And like, let's all face it, Tampa is a better team on paper. So if you are going to get a game where you almost outshoot the Tampa Bay Lightning 2-1 and you lose again in their rink, that sucks. That
was pretty much the series right there, because
Yeah.
if Tampa goes on to win the Cup, and at this point it seems like it's almost a lock, up 3-1, that's going to be the game that people look back on, especially Habs fans, and say, man, oh man, if we had just won that game 2, where we outshot them 2-1, had all that pressure, we could have split the series on the road, come back to the Bell Center with this series tied 1-1. That was it right there. It really was.
Yeah. And like, to your point about like things to look back on, like, let's go more specific. In that game, you have a game tied at 1. You're in the second. Montreal had 16 shots in that second period. They're playing incredible. And then there's the Blake Coleman goal with 1 second left in the period, where he's sliding and beats Price. I think.
Yeah, and it's not like a normal goal. It's like one of the greatest goals you'll ever see in the Stanley Cup Final.
So you're just watching Montreal play well, control play, get lots of shots, and then Coleman does that. And it's like, just like, and then Montreal only being down 2-1 in the third period. There was the was it Edmondson? It was the Edmondson giveaway behind the net.
Yeah, at that point, cycling it behind the net. He tried to get it to Petrie, I think it was, and
yeah, I think for a split second, Edmondson thought he was playing for the Maple Leafs against Montreal. But yeah,
that was like bad. The most that would have been like the most Maple Leafs thing ever.
Yeah.
A defenseman doing that in the Cup final.
Just things not going Montreal's way, and it's a discussion, right? Like, you look at those metric boards, and I think that game was something like 72% of the time Montreal would win that game based on how they played. But what people forget about those models is those models are based on average shooting and average goaltending. And Tampa's not average in either of those things. So it's like that's what's so crushing, and that is where you have to tip your cap to Tampa too, because you can outplay them, but their players are more talented than your players, so they need fewer chances. It's basic math, everyone. So Tampa's taking advantage, and then in Game 3, right? Like, you can give credit to Tampa for coming out. I think it was 2-0, like 3 minutes in, or like 3.5 minutes in after they scored that power play goal. The first one's a seeing eye shot, just picks a corner. And then again, like I said, they score on a power play. Like to what you said earlier about like coming back to the Bell Center, a crowd down 1-0. Like first shift of the game or second shift of the game, you're down. And then a power play goal. And now you're chasing, and you can't chase Tampa too. Like that is one factor that I'm sure Montreal acknowledged going into this series. We have to score first. We know they have the firepower. We know on paper they're more talented than us. So we have to score first so we can kind of get into our system, and that system that has worked so well for them. Or even too, I would have said Montreal, kind of similar to how well they played in Game 7 against Toronto. The longer that game stayed 0-0, the more it felt like it benefited Montreal. And it happened that way with Vegas too. With those long spurts, I'm like, this benefits Montreal.
Yeah, because that's when they're most comfortable.
Yeah, they're okay with that. It's a
low-scoring game. It's tight. It's a one-goal game. Obviously, Montreal wants to play with the lead and kind of protect the lead. Like, that's just their style of play. But yeah, when they have to start chasing games, it's not good, man, for that Habs team, because they're just not built to run and gun and come back from 2 or 3 goals down, right? They just don't have, they simply, like you said, they do not have the talent, especially compared to a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, and it happened all 3 games. Tampa scored first all 3 games. Little side, and I wrote the stat down. It's an absolute random banana stat. Tampa's played 21 games in the playoffs, and they've scored first in 17 of them. And they're 15-2 in those 17 games. Like one of those little things, like in the playoffs. Unreal. But yeah, things have evened out for Montreal. I'd like to go over all the underlying numbers for them and just see like where they were going into this final and where they are now. Because like people were beside themselves, like nothing made sense based on results compared to their play on the ice. Like now, has it just like evened out in one swift kick to the nuts? Maybe, like we have to dissect it, but I guess I'll let you go on a rant, Bruno. Are the Montreal Canadiens what you thought they were?
Yeah, so this is a great topic, and the short answer is yes. I think the Montreal Canadiens are exactly who we thought they were. And here's the thing, okay? I wasn't a believer after the first round against the Leafs, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, right? You have the John Tavares injury. That obviously changed the series. Then they go into that Jets series, against a team that, quite frankly, just wasn't very good. Something we've also talked about plenty of times on this show.
Probably the easiest second-round opponent in the history of the playoffs.
Yeah, they just weren't a very good team. And then obviously you mix in the Mark Scheifele suspension. That was a disaster for Winnipeg. But the one series that really impressed me and made me become sort of a believer was what they did to the Vegas Golden Knights in round 3.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Because they stuck to their game plan. They stuck to their identity. And for the 3rd series in a row, we saw them shut down the other team's top offensive threats.
Yeah.
And it was becoming a pattern at that point, right? Matthews and Marner in round 1. I mean, there was no Scheifele in round 2, but Wheeler, Connor, Ehlers, those guys were completely shut down in round 2. And then Stone, Pacioretty, Carlson, Alex Tuck, go down the list. I mean, the Habs did a great job neutralizing them. But now you're seeing it all fall apart in the Stanley Cup Final. And listen, I get what they did in Game 2. They outshot Tampa 2-1, dominated that game. But it was demoralizing because if you can't win a game like that, where you're outplaying a team that badly and you still lose and you go down 2-0 in the series, like I said, a few minutes ago, I think that was the game that is the game that people are going to look back on and say, you know what? The Stanley Cup Final was decided right then and there, because this series would obviously be completely different if the Habs were able to get a split.
Yeah.
But what I look at is, the issues that they had all season long, Lepore, because listen, we can talk about Carey Price, and I'll bring up Carey Price's numbers real quick, okay? .932 save percentage in the first round against the Leafs, a .942 save percentage in the second round against the Jets, a .933 in round 3 against Vegas, and now it's down to .835. Okay, that's brutal. Obviously, Price's play has fallen off a cliff, and you're seeing Price has not been sharp. You go back to that game 3, that point shot from Jan Ruda that just, I mean, I know it was a screen, but it snuck through, beats Price, top shelf. Then the Victor Hedman shot on the power play that Price probably should have had.
Even the Johnson goal, like, he thought he had it, like, very uncarry Price. Like, and even sometimes too, when we trash goalies, I like to look at when, if they really deserve it, if it's when they're not allowing a goal. Like, the whole game, he just looked kind of like that. Like, do I have it? Like, fighting the puck, I guess the easiest way to put it. Do I have it? Don't I have it? Rebounds, very unlike Carey Price.
He just doesn't look sharp. Just doesn't look sharp, doesn't look comfortable, doesn't look nearly as good as he did in the first 3 rounds. And obviously, Carey Price has been an issue. But what I look at is the problem the Montreal Canadiens had all season long, and it's their inability to generate offense. And we're seeing it again. And I've talked about this so many times, especially with the team. I always bring up the New York Islanders when I bring up this point. What is the ceiling of a team like the New York Islanders? Yes, we get it. They're great defensively. They have good goaltending. They play their system. But when you're running into a team like the Tampa Bay Lightning with all this talent, and there's a huge talent discrepancy, and listen, I know a team like the Islanders has Matt Barzal, who's really good, and they have some other great players. I mean, Pajot had a great playoff run, and you look at guys like even Kyle Palmieri that chipped in and scored a bunch of goals. But when you just look at the talent on paper, what's the ceiling of a team like that? And I view the Montreal Canadiens in the same light. Like, at some point, you're going to run into a team that's that much more talented than you. And I get it. They beat the Leafs. The Leafs were more talented. They beat the Vegas Golden Knights, who were more talented. You can even say the Jets were more talented. But how many times are you going to get away with that? And you run into a Lightning team here that not only is extremely talented on paper, but they're battle tested. This team has been through wars together.
They look, it feels different. Like, there's a total machine. It just
feels like they're a well-oiled machine, and it feels like they are a team that is out for blood. It doesn't feel like, a Leaf situation where they go up 3-1 and it's like, whoa, we haven't been here. Like, what do we do now? We only got to win one more game, but they couldn't, close that out to save their lives. This doesn't feel like that.
Imagine the Leafs in this situation up 3-0 in this Stanley Cup Final. We'd be so nervous. Oh my God, we'd be so nervous.
Their pants right now. That's I can't.
We wouldn't even enjoy it until that final buzzer went.
Unbelievable. But yeah, it just feels so much different with this Lightning team, Lepore. Like, it feels like it's over. And I get it. It's not over until the fat lady sings, till the final buzzer. But this team is down 3-0 right now. They've been outscored 14-5 over 3 games. And you know what? Bringing up some of the underlying numbers, Lepore, like you mentioned, the Canadiens actually have the shot attempt edge. And I mean, a lot of that did come from game 2 when they outshot the Habs. But just in pure shot attempts in Corsi, they're plus 37. They're plus 17 in shots on goal. But the Lightning have the edge. It's a very slight edge in scoring chances. They're only plus 1 in scoring chances, plus 3 in high danger scoring chances. But their expected goals for percentage is just under 53%. So,
but that's where the talent comes in. That's where the talent comes in.
With all their talent, they don't need a lot of chances.
Yeah. If it's 50-50, Tampa's going to beat Montreal. Like, that's the way it goes. Or they should, or we expect them to, I should say.
Yeah, so just kind of circling back here. I mean, this Habs team, like, think about it. They played at an 86-point pace this season. And just to bring up another stat, so if you look at the straight win-loss record of both of these teams after Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final, Lepore, you're going to laugh at this, okay? So the Tampa Bay Lightning are 51-26 with a plus 64 goal differential this season. Okay. So 25 games over 500 with a plus 64 goal differential. You want to know the Habs win-loss record right now?
I'm ready for it. Let's do it. Make me laugh, Bruno.
The Habs, through 76 games, are 36-40, 4 games under 500 with a minus 12 goal differential. So, and I know it's a very simple thing to look at, win-loss record, goal differential, but when you just see the massive discrepancy in these two teams, just looking at their record and goal differential, like, is anyone surprised that this is happening right now? And sure, Lepore picked the Lightning to win in 7. I picked the Lightning to win in 6. We both thought it was going to be, a lot closer of a series, especially considering how well Carey Price was playing, especially considering how well the Habs were committing to their system and their structure. But we're seeing this dam completely burst right now, Lepore. And you know what? I'm going to say it. Justice is being served.
Wow.
Because the better team, the more talented team, is going to win the Stanley Cup. And maybe this is going to age poorly, and maybe Montreal's going to go off a miracle comeback. But I'm putting the fork in the Habs. They're done. And you know what? Like I said, justice has been served. The better team is going to win the Stanley Cup and repeat as Stanley Cup champions.
Yeah, there it is. I just think, again, like, you need things to happen. And like how things were happening for Montreal in those first 3 rounds. Again, like, you look at certain stats where like Anderson's got donuts, like Toffoli's got donuts. Does Caulfield have any points?
Caulfield, I believe, has 0. Let me double
0?
check.
I'm looking back to goals.
Oh, you know what? He has 1 assist in 3 games.
Okay, so he's got like and I'm not necessarily like circling those guys as to why they lost, but those they need points. Like Suzuki's been buzzing. Like we all love Suzuki on the show. We've talked about him a lot, and he's proving in these games. Like, you're noticing him. Player. But like, these guys got to score, and how I say, like, when things sound overly simplistic, but had you showed me after 3 games that those 3 players didn't have a goal, I'd be like, yeah, Montreal's probably getting shit kicked. Is how it's going. So it's just not happening for them right now. And the big thing to me going into the series that I circled where I thought it could get ugly is on Montreal's D. Like, we've talked about Montreal's D a lot on this show, especially in the playoffs, because like, they have played well and they have a good group, but it's funny to say, like, playing a team like Tampa. And to be fair, Montreal, like, we talked about how much speed they have and how they come at you in waves, but what shocked me about that series was how Montreal was able to do so well with Vegas's speed because of the lack of foot speed the Habs have on D. Like, everyone talks about how big they are, but in today's NHL, I mean, there's that saying, like, if you can't skate, we don't want you. But they just played incredible against Vegas. And like you said, that was a series for me as well, where I did start to believe in Montreal because they did beat Vegas. Like kind of to your point you made earlier about how justice is being served. Justice was served in that series. Montreal beat Vegas.
100% agree. They were the better team in that series.
But in this series, like, with the lack of foot speed on D and them not getting goals from the guys who would need to score for them to beat an elite team, and then you throw in Price, his numbers adjusting, no chance, man. Like, it wasn't going to happen. What's weird is, and I was talking to someone about this the other day. You mentioned like certain teams and how like they have their ceiling based on their talent. And I was trying to think of other sports too, but we talked, I believe it was last week, about if this is the most unlikely Stanley Cup run in the history of the NHL or in the last 20 years or however we did it. But you do think about those teams that made those runs. Like, we talked about how Calgary went on that run. We talked about how Edmonton went on their run, the Ducks, and even kind of like not even going to the final, like 2017, the Sens, like, were 1 goal away from the Stanley Cup Final. Now you have Montreal. What do all those teams have in common?
Goaltending.
But they didn't do it.
Yeah.
It's just weird. And like, and a lot of it's like luck, because at the end of the day, Edmonton, Anaheim, and Calgary and Ottawa in their series against Pittsburgh, they all went 7. But it's like a weird thing where it's like, we've never had that team go on this magical run and do it and go all the way. They always seem to fall short or just short or millimeters. And there's no real explanation for that. It's kind of like a hockey geek conversation, but we were going over them, like my buddies and I, and then I'm like, yeah, none of them were.
Yeah, it's like, hold on a second. None of them actually won the Stanley Cup.
Actually did. And I was thinking about other sports, like the Nationals won. That was kind of random. And I'm like in the NFL, has anyone really won in my life that was like a random winner, like to go all the way? Like, when I was a kid, it was always the random team out of the AFC would get blown out. Blown out.
You could say maybe the Giants against the Patriots.
Yeah, because they
like Pats had their undefeated season.
Yeah, because weren't they a 9-7 team? And
they were 9-7, but they were they had an insane defensive line. Yeah. Just their defense in general was really good. But it just does not happen very often. I mean, obviously we talked about hockey, but just in sports in general.
To go all the way,
all the way and actually finish the job. To go on that Cinderella run and finish it off.
It's the whole thing, and I know people get bored with these conversations, but. And people who know me well know, I reference this, everything is about math. Everything is always about math. So if a team plays a certain style and they have a low percentage chance to win, it doesn't mean they're not going to win. They can still win. It's just unlikely. So it's the whole thing of, I guess it's winning that happening 4 times. Because if you are a less talented team, well, it's likely you're going to get outplayed or have less of the puck or fewer attempts on goal. But it doesn't mean you're not going to win. It's just unlikely. But for it to happen 4 times, it's hard enough to win 4 coin flips. It's hard enough to win if you're the quote unquote better team and you have a 60-70% chance to win. And it's always funny because when you do look at it, even Tampa, what were here's Tampa. This is an incredible lineup. And I know we're saying this now, we have that confirmation bias, they're a game away from winning the Stanley Cup, but that is an incredible, incredible lineup. And we look back at their odds going into the season or going into the playoffs to win the Stanley Cup, and it was probably 6-1, 8-1. So they're saying there's only a 1-6 or 1-8 chance this team goes all the way. And now it's easy to say, well, that's a joke. You should have been lower. It should have been 3-1 or something like that. But it's still hard to do. It's still hard to, even if you are the better team, if it's 60-40, even for it to happen 3 and 4 times, where for that weaker team, it's almost impossible. And I guess it's just run out. It seems in the history of hockey, it always seems to just run out. Even if it's right at the end, it's just that last time you can't get it done.
Yeah, we've seen it so many times, right? The Flames lost in the Cup Final in 2004. Well, even going back, the Ducks lost in the Cup Final. Then the next year, the Flames. And then you go to, what was Edmonton. The next team I wanted to bring up? Edmonton. Edmonton in 2006, that magical run. They ended up losing in the Cup Final. Even Dallas last year. I remember they went into the Cup Final against the Lightning with a negative goal differential in the playoffs.
I didn't even know that. There you go.
So they went into it with a negative goal differential in the playoffs with Tyler Seguin injured. Because remember Seguin had I forgot the exact surgery he had this offseason, but
he had, you know what? I know exactly what he had. He had a torn labrum in his hip and he had to get it stitched. And I had a very similar surgery. So I was tracking his recovery in progress.
There you go. Lepore's all over.
Yeah. We're a medical podcast now. Lepore's hip surgery.
But yeah. You had Tyler Seguin, who has been their best player for the last 4 years. I think even longer. I forgot how long he's actually been in Dallas at this point, but he was their 8th leading scorer in the playoffs last year because clearly he was playing at 50%. And that team still made it to the Cup Final. But again, these teams year after year always fall short. And another thing I wanted to bring up about the Habs too, and if you listen to our last show, I brought this up 5 times, was the Habs historically amazing penalty kill percentage. They were operating at a 93.5% clip on the penalty kill. It was the greatest penalty kill in NHL playoff history among teams that had played at least 15 games in the postseason. And then they ran into the Lightning, who were clicking at 37% on the power play. And of course, something had to give on either side here. And the Lightning have 2 power play goals in this series on 7 attempts, which is just under a 30% clip. So the Habs went 2 series in a row against Winnipeg and Vegas without allowing a power play goal. And that's another thing, right? That's another thing that's now swinging in the opposite direction, evening things out.
Seinfeld, it evening out.
Exactly. You have Carey Price coming back down to earth, the D-core coming back down to earth, the Habs having trouble scoring, which they had trouble scoring all year long. And then, of course, this penalty kill also evening out. So you put all of those things together, Lepore, I don't think anyone should be surprised right now that this team is getting beat this badly by this incredible Lightning team that is on the verge of a repeat. So,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it really is as simple as that. Is there anything else you wanted to add in about this Habs team, Lepore?
Beyond the results, that we're going to see in Game 4, I'm really intrigued to see how Montreal comes out. I'm really and truly am intrigued to see how they're going to approach the game and if they still have that energy, that fire. Because, like, let's face it, this is a team that has impressed a lot of people. Like, it's a great story. Like, whether you're cheering for Montreal, if you're a Leafs fan, if you're a neutral, the Montreal Canadiens during this season, I mean, COVID's pissed everyone off. It's been great to watch and it's been fun. So, like I said, beyond the result, even if they do lose, I am intrigued to see how if they're still motivated, if they still come out flying, because people always say like, oh, they're professionals and this and that, but they're facing a giant of a task right now. Like being down 3-0 to, I don't even want to call them an elite team. Like this is beyond an elite team, like a team that's 18 million over the cap. And we can talk about that some more if you want, but yeah, so I'm intrigued to know like how this team is going to come out, and I really hope I see a Montreal team that leaves it all out there in Game 4 and maybe in a Game 5, a Game 6, a Game 7. But yeah, I really want to see like an exciting Montreal team in the fourth game, just to at least show everyone or put a cap on this run that Montreal Canadiens fans are going to remember for a long time, and hockey fans are going to remember for a long time. So. I'm rooting for at least a great effort on the side of the Montreal Canadiens in Game 4.
Yeah, fair enough. And you know what? Like we counted them out, and I'm sure a lot of people in the hockey world counted them out when the Leafs were up 3-1. And I've mentioned this so many times. Like the Habs scored just 4 goals in those first 4 games against the Leafs, and now you're seeing the same thing really in this Tampa series. They have 5 goals in the first 3 games. They're getting outscored 14-5. I mean, it seems like this series is going to be done Monday night, but you never know with this Habs team, right? Because they showed a ton of fight against the Leafs. No one thought they were going to come back from 3-1 down. I know it's a different beast being in a 3-0 hole right now, but it would not surprise me one bit if the Habs do come out in Game 4 and give their best effort of this series so far, even better than perhaps what we saw in Game 2 when they outshot the Lightning 2-1. So, yeah, I'm with you, Lepore. Like, I want to see the Habs come out in front of that Bell Center crowd and all those fans in the streets of Montreal and just give a great effort, a passionate effort, and just go out with a bang.
You know what? I will say it just as a sort of neutral here. I think people know what I mean by that. I hope Montreal wins Game 4.
Okay.
Like, I hope they win Game 4. So we have people partying in the streets of Montreal, and then it goes back to Tampa. You have a packed building. This has been a crappy year for everyone. Tampa last year won in a bubble. This year they'll have their fans in the building. And I'm not saying like, oh, then I hope Tampa wins Game 5. I'm just saying at least let that be a story. Like let that be a thing that we can all talk about, and let the Montreal Canadian fans enjoy a win at home. Let them dance in the street, and then give Tampa a chance to win at home in front of their crowd. And then who knows from there. But again, like more hockey's better for me. So like, I hope Montreal wins Game 4 and pushes this thing.
Fair enough. And that would be pretty cool, because if you go back to last year, the Lightning didn't get to celebrate. I know this is a thing going on in Twitter right now. People are talking about it, how they didn't get to celebrate with their families last year because of being in the bubble. And even this year, I think they wanted to get the families flown into Montreal for Game 4, but I think that's been rejected at this point. So it's only like they're like immediate families that are there. And, you know, usually like that's one of the best things when you win the Stanley Cup. All your family members flood onto the ice, you start taking pictures, and it's just the best time in the world, right? So maybe it would be a little bit sweeter for Tampa if they were able to close out the Cup in Game 5 on home ice. But at this point, I think this Lightning team, like I said, they're out for blood, and they just want to get this thing over with in 4. But regardless, I hope we're in for an awesome Game 4.
Yeah.
But Lepore, do you want to switch things over now to the Lightning side of things?
Sure. Let's talk about Tampa Bay.
All right, man, let's do it. So this Tampa Bay Lightning team, okay, I sent out a tweet 2 days before the start of the playoffs. And I was thinking about this towards the end of the season, and I didn't think enough people were talking about them, especially considering they had just won the Stanley Cup. And maybe it was because of, Lightning fatigue. Like when a team's just like really good, like even like the Golden State Warriors, it's like, okay, how much can we possibly talk about this team? We know how great they are. They're going to get back to the NBA Finals. Obviously when Golden State had their 5-year run where they were one of the greatest dynasties we've ever seen. And listen, the Lightning didn't win or didn't get to the Stanley Cup Final 5 times in a row like the Warriors, but this is a team for the last 6 or 7 years that has just been unbelievable. They have the best record, I believe, now in the NHL since John Cooper took over that team. So it's been like a 7-year run where they have the best record. But anyway, going back to my original point, 2 days before the start of the playoffs this year, I sent out a tweet and I said, it's pretty terrifying that the Tampa Bay Lightning played at a 110-point pace this season, despite getting just 38 of a possible 112 games from Nikita Kucherov and Steven Stamkos.
Yeah.
Like, think about that. Let's talk about the Leafs for a second. Imagine the Leafs not having Austin Matthews, Lepore, for the entire 56-game regular season. So you take out Matthews' 41 goals, or even Mitch Marner for that matter. Take out Mitch Marner's whatever he had this year, 65 points or whatever the hell it was. And imagine the Leafs like still finishing exactly where they finished without one of those two players. That's essentially what the Lightning did this year. Nikita Kucherov is a former league MVP. He is now leading the playoffs in scoring by 9 points. He's like putting up numbers that we haven't seen since like Gretzky and Lemieux. Like I've been seeing the broadcast flash graphics saying that he's like the first guy with like back-to-back 30-point postseason since like Lemieux and Gretzky.
Since Gretzky, yeah, that's
Gretzky.
One. Yeah.
And like, so, this team, I just didn't think people were talking enough about what they had done in the regular season. And now we're seeing it all play out in front of our eyes. And yeah, Lepore, man, like this team is this next level. And what do you think? I mean, just give me your take on the Lightning in general.
I think it's that thing like everyone tries to be. Well, I think it starts on one side where they finally did win. So it's kind of that like breath out. So it's like now you just don't really think about them. Like, they won. So you kind of, your brain moves somewhere else of like who's going to win next. And then when people do their picks, they always try to be cute. Like everyone was on, not that it was like out of whack, but everyone was on like the Avalanche bandwagon this year. And I was kind of questioning it because of like their youth and inexperience. And from the beginning, like Tampa was my pick. And not to sound like a hero, it's not a hot take. Like Tampa, I just thought was the best team, and I thought they were going to do it. It'd be interesting to see like these discussions now are going to happen, comparing them to teams of like recent past of, are they the best post-lockout team? Like the one that always jumps out to me is the Kings, the 2012 and 20. The Blackhawks fans are going to come spitting at me. But the 2012 and 2014 LA Kings teams, like those are the teams to me that I look at that I pretty well think like those teams were unbeatable. Like they had everything. Like even quickly comparing, so Chicago had Antti Niemi, and then they had Crawford. And like no disrespect to them, but the Kings had prime Jonathan Quick, and now Tampa has Vasilevsky, maybe the best post-lockout goalie. So I think that this team is that good where like these like all-time discussions happen, and they're not even done. Who knows? Like who knows how many cups and finals we see this group win. I mean, the team's going to be very different next year based on their cap situation, but they have everything, man. They have everything. Like as a Leafs fan, it's so crappy to listen to takes all the time when people just tear apart your roster, because I'm not just about being a Leafs fan, like whatever team we cheer for, you hear people shitting on your roster and they'll always point to something you don't have. And it's like, well, if we had that, like we'd have everything and we'd be a total juggernaut. Thanks, Chris Johnson. But like even the years where the Leafs D was a little weaker, they would point to us and say, well, if the Leafs had insert elite teams D here, they could win the cup. It's like, well, if we had that team's D, we'd go 82-0. So like I always like hate those takes, but you point to Tampa and it's like there's no weaknesses. They have high-end scoring. They have depth. They have defensive players. They have a true number one defenseman, and they have like an all-time goalie. What? Oh, and they play in a Sunshine State. Anything else to make the situation more perfect? So it's just this team, man. Like, we shout out Montreal earlier, but at the same time, it's kind of like, well, I don't know what you're supposed to do or what you're trying to build. And I was wondering in situations like this, I'd like to get your take on it. If you're a GM and you look across and see the Tampa Bay Lightning, what do you say? Like what do you just like? I'm going to do the best I can, and hopefully I get lucky if I play them. I mean, that's really it. Like, even you go deeper down, how was Point like a third rounder?
Yeah, there was Point he was a third round pick, and Kucherov was a second round pick.
Kucherov, I thought Kucherov was maybe like late first or something. But and then like things that like even they didn't really know about. Like, I can't believe it's not getting more traction, but like Sergachev for Drouin, like that deal. I mean, like, everything has gone their way. And at the end of the day, only one team can win the Stanley Cup. So I guess only one team can be this good. So stars are going to align for one team. And I'm sure if we go through all the all-time great teams, there's a lot of weird and wacky things with regard to how the team was built and how they did get so good. But this is an all-time team, man. We're going to be talking about this team forever. And like I said, they're not even done. So who knows? Who knows like where this is going to go and continue, and maybe we see something really historic. Maybe we'll get to see the first time they got to win their second first. But who would, at this point today, who would count this team out from being the first post-lockout team to win 3 in a row, right? So
oh yeah, they're 100%. I mean, I don't know if the futures have already been released, but to win next year's Stanley Cup,
oh, I'm sure that you can bet somewhere.
Yeah, they're going to be the favorites for sure. But no, Lepore, I think that's a great topic you just brought up there in terms of who is the best post-lockout team. And I think if the Lightning do go back-to-back here, I really think they are going to vault to number one, because I don't think anyone looks at those Penguins teams that went back-to-back in 16 and 17 and has them in the conversation, or was it 15, 16?
You think?
15, 16,
it was
17.
17. Yeah. And like I kind of like forgot to say Pittsburgh, but like you wouldn't put them at that level. Like, you think, say, playing those, I guess it was kind of like the same era, like playing those Blackhawks or playing those Kings teams, the Pens would have no chance?
No, I don't think so. Like, I know they had Crosby and Malkin, but one of the years they won the cup, I want to say it was the second year, their decor was a disaster.
That was always the opinion
Hazy and Brian Dumoulin.
That was always like the thing on
ice
Leafs
time
fans
during that playoff run.
Yeah, Leafs fans would always scream, "Look at the Penguins! They don't have a D." Like, oh god.
Yeah, that was incredible that, Crosby, Malkin, and Kessel were able to carry that team. And obviously, when Matt Murray was good.
Yeah, that's
and now
back to my goaltending point of like, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, like I think about those teams, and I don't think that those Penguins teams were as good as the Kings teams you brought up, or even the Blackhawks teams with Kane and Taves. And even like going back to like 2010 when the Blackhawks had like Kane, Taves, and like prime Duncan Keith and Seabrook. And they also had like Dustin Byfuglien and Andrew Ladd.
Versteeg going forever, man. Like,
exactly. So yeah, I look at that team. Like, I think that team is really high on my list as well. But man, when you go through this Tampa Bay roster, you nailed it, Lepore. Like, there is not a single hole on this roster. And, I think about a guy like Mikhail Sergachev or even like Ryan McDonough. Like, these are like your number 2 and 3 defensemen.
Yeah,
like,
McDonough.
Are you kidding me?
McDonough was like the boss of New York when
it's
he
just
was there.
Insane. Like, those are your 2 and 3 behind Victor friggin' Hedman. Like, this is absurd, man. And then you look at Andrei Vasilevsky, who honestly, he really is in play to be like, I mean, this guy's incredible. Like, let's talk about Vasilevsky for a second, because just looking at the numbers, he right now, through 3 games in the Stanley Cup Final, I have my notes somewhere here about Andrei Vasilevsky. He has a .948 save percentage.
What is it for the playoffs?
And right now, during this entire playoff run, he has a .938 save percentage and a 1.94 goals against.
He is a .938.
A .938 save percentage. Like, this is like historically great.
We were
Like, this is
talking
up
about
there-
things evening out, man. Like that. I don't know. That's a bananas number.
That's
a bananas
unreal.
number.
Like, that's up there with like J.S. Jaguar, who I believe was like over a 940. Even like Tim Thomas, when the Bruins won the cup, he had an absurd save percentage. But like Vasilevsky, man, he's like right up there right now. This dude doesn't get enough credit because we talked about this, Lepore, before the show. This is a Lightning team. When you think about them, the first thing you think about is talent and their ability to score goals. You don't think about Andrei Vasilevsky. A lot of people think like, oh, any goalie could play on, in front behind this Lightning team. Like, stick in X goalie from any team and he would have a 920 save percentage and the Lightning would be fine. That's just simply not the case.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen it now. This guy has a Vezina. He won the Stanley Cup last season. He's putting up these absurd numbers, during this last playoff run, Lepore. Let me just double check this right now because I don't think his numbers were nearly this good. And I'm just going to check.
Probably not. Those are crazy numbers.
So last year in the playoffs, they were good. He had a 927 save percentage.
Yeah.
Which is still great.
It's really good. Yeah.
But I mean, what he's doing this year is just next level. So yeah, like this Lightning team. And then obviously you look at their forward group. Like, isn't it hilarious that Steven Stamkos is basically a role player on this team?
I had that exact conversation with someone the other day. Like, Stamkos is in their depth.
Like, it's hilarious. Like, Stamkos right now, and I'll just look at the numbers in the Cup final. So Kucherov right now has 5 points in 3 games, 3 goals. Palat, 4 points in 3 games. Blake Coleman, Tyler Johnson, Braden Point all have 3 points. Steven Stamkos right now in the Cup final, 1 point in 3 games. He's got 1 goal. And it was that power play goal he scored that snuck through Carey Price short side, I believe it was.
Think of it this way.
This is their captain, their $8 million captain, who every Leaf fan in the world wanted Toronto to sign during his UFA offseason. And he is now a role player on the Tampa Bay Lightning.
I was just going to say, I'm going to sum up how good Tampa Bay is in 1 point. Here they are up 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Final. Their captain, who makes $9 million, is it 9, 8, 9, 9?
I think it's a shade over 8. Here, let me actually.
Okay.
I'm just curious now.
So up 3-0, Stanley Cup Final, captain making what he makes
8.5,
former 65 goal scorer, and he's not even in anyone's brain to win the Conn Smythe. Think about that for a second.
Insane.
And that's insane. Like, having a guy of that pedigree, and it's not even a thought. He's, like you said, he's a role player. He's a secondary guy. Crazy, man. Crazy. What a luxury.
And then even going back to last year, how everyone was like, wow, I can't believe Tampa's going on this run without Stamkos. Like, as we all know, Stamkos played, 1 game in the Cup final. He scored on his own. He had 3 shifts. He scored a goal.
What a goal.
Everyone's like, wow, I can't believe this. But now we're seeing it again. It's because Nikita Kucherov and Braden Point are the actual mega stars on this team.
Yeah.
And you add in, like we said, Andrei Vasilevsky and Victor Hedman. Like, this team, it just doesn't end with the talent. Then we didn't even talk about Yanni Gourde and Andre Palat.
Palat's sick player. Yeah.
Like, these, I mean, it just goes on and on. So this team is incredible. I'm expecting them to finish this off, whether it's game 4 or game 5. Who knows how far the Habs actually push this thing. But like you said, Lepore, it'll be very interesting to see the conversations that come out of this. Once the Lightning finish the job here, in terms of where people have them as, where they rank among the best post-lockout teams. And I think it's right up there. And quite frankly, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment, but I think I'd have them number 1 on my list.
Yeah, they're good, man.
So, all right, man. Shall we move on?
Let's move on, Bruno.
At this point. Actually, Lepore, before we move on to our Leafs conversation, just one thing I want to bring up. The Conn Smythe race. Okay, just bring up some betting odds here. I want to get your take on this. So right now, it depends what book you look at. I'm looking at Bet365. Andrei Vasilevsky is the favorite to win the Conn Smythe at this point. He's -130. Kucherov is second at +110. I mean, he leads the playoffs in scoring by 9 points. He's been awesome in the Cup final. And then Braden Point has slipped down to 10-1. So who do you think at this point is going to win the Conn Smythe Trophy?
We talked about this last week, and we're going into this final. I didn't really have it going to Vasilevsky simply because I didn't think people would circle Vasilevsky as the reason why Tampa Bay won this Stanley Cup. I mean, there's multiple reasons why, but like the main player, the main reason why. But as you just said, his save percentage for the playoffs, that now I kind of think it'd be stupidity if he didn't get it. And who knows what happens in game 4 or if it goes longer. But I mean, how much can it really adjust now? There would only be a max of 4 games, but I mean, it could fall off the map, but people know what I mean. That number is craziness. And I also think too, so he didn't get the Vezina, somewhat controversially. Like, people were pretty upset that he didn't get the Vezina. And then going forward, it came out like they don't release who laid the votes, but they do release the voting, like the actual voting, like slips. And I forget how many GMs, I think it was like 4, left them off the ballot completely. Now you can make of things you can make of that what you wish. Now, some people, I was listening to one podcast and they were shitting on the GMs, saying like, can you believe the NHL is this stupid? You have GMs who would not take Vasilevsky in their top whatever. And I think people miss the point with that, because this came up a lot, and I heard a lot about it being in Ottawa. This came up a lot when Doughty and Carlson were battling it out every year for the Norris. So what the voter will do is, and is strategic to increase the impact of their vote. So let's say Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno were competing for the Norris. So I don't know exactly how it works, but let's say you put 5 people on your ballot, and the guy you put first gets 5 points, second 4, and as you go down 3, 2, 1. So if I want to vote for Michael Lepore, and the 2 big ones are Bruno and Lepore, if I put Lepore first and I put Bruno second, well, that's 5 points and 4 points. So I only really gave Lepore 1 point over Bruno. But if I put Lepore first and I put Bruno off the ballot completely, that's a 5-point gap. So it's strategic in the voting. And this is where people have put their hands up in the air and said it should be exposed who, whether it's journalists or GMs or whomever votes for each award. And you can debate about that all day long. So I think it had more to do with that. But either way, he was pissed off, I think, because of that. He looks like he's played pissed off. So now there's that thing in me too of like you mentioning his save percentage, and like now it's like they'll give him the Conn Smythe now, like because of that, just to kind of be like, okay, like one thing maybe got kind of out of whack. And like, I'm not saying Fleury was unjustified, but it was a debate, and a lot of people have circled that Vezina as kind of like a lifetime achievement award for Fleury. Like, this is a year we can give him it, so like let's give him it. But Vasilevsky could have had it. He was named to the first team All-Star team, which you and I said off air. And way to go, NHL. The top goalie in the league is on the bizarre second All-Star team. So weird. But yeah, so at this point, I think Vasilevsky's the guy. Yeah, I mean, it sums it up. I think that number, when you said it, 938. Like, I can't think of, that's a number that doesn't make sense. Like, that'd be if you told me a guy was scoring at a clip higher than a goal a game, where it's like, okay, we got to give it to him. Like, this doesn't make sense. So do you have it any other way? Would you put your money anywhere else?
No, at this point, like, I know we talked about before the series how the value was on Point and Kucherov because they were both 4-1. And that made a lot of sense because you figure if Vasilevsky's numbers slipped a little bit, Kucherov and Point had a good series. And right now, like, Kucherov was that guy who's having the series. Like, he's got 5 points in 3 games, 3 goals. Point's been a lot quieter, even though Point has 3 points. I think he has 3 assists. So he hasn't added to his goal total in the Cup final. But yeah, at this point, with this series most likely ending within the next couple of games, I think Vasilevsky's the guy. And yeah, it's funny because going into the Cup final, the spotlight was on Carey Price. And you know what? Rightfully so. It's Carey Price. He has the brand. He plays for the Montreal Canadiens. He has the pedigree. It's Carey Price. And, you know, we all viewed him as the main factor in the Canadiens' playoff run up to this point. And we've talked about all the other great things that have happened with this team along the way, but Carey Price has obviously been the main guy. And it's funny how no one was talking about Andrei Vasilevsky.
It's true. It's true.
No one was talking about him. And it's like, like I mentioned, how when you think about this Tampa team, you do not think about goaltending and Andrei Vasilevsky. You think about everything else. And heading into this series, where is it here? I have it here. Vasilevsky was leading the playoffs with a .936 save percentage and 4 shutouts. So he's upped his save percentage.
That's another 4 shutouts. Like, oh my God.
It's insane. And no one was talking about him. So yeah, I think at this point, I mean, there's really no value in betting it. I mean, I guess you can still put in a pretty sizable bet if you want at minus 130. But
he said minus 130. I think he said minus 110, minus 130. Okay, yeah.
It's minus 130 right now for Andrei Vasilevsky. Like maybe Kucherov backdoor. Like if Kucherov has like a 3-point game in the closeout game, like maybe the vote is a lot closer than we think.
Yeah.
To the Conn Smythe. But yeah, I think at this point, like, I mean, especially because isn't there another stat, Lepore, where Vasilevsky has like 4 straight shutouts in closeout games?
Is it elimination
in like series clinching games?
Something like that.
Something like that, where he's got like 4 like imagine he gets another shutout to win the Stanley Cup for the Lightning.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Freeman was go ahead.
No, I was going to say at this point, like I think it's Vasilevsky's to lose unless he gets like completely like lit up in game 4 and this series continues on here.
Yeah. Freeman was going over how the process works because it's the Conn Smythe's a media one. It's media voters. So he said the way it works is 10 minutes before the end of any clinching game, they have to submit their ballot. So it's almost perplexing. It's like, okay, so let's say game 4, Montreal's up 2 with 10 minutes to go. Everyone writes in, okay, say Vasilevsky at this point because they have to submit it because it's an elimination game, 10 minutes to go. Kucherov scores 2 goals and then scores the winner in overtime to win the cup.
Oh man!
So like then you wonder about that stuff, and it happened before. Because some people remember. Funny that the Euro is going on and Italy's doing very well, but in the 2006 World Cup when Italy won, and the MVP of the World Cup is not really a thing that's a big deal. It's not really truly talked about. The golden boot's big, the guy who scores the most goals, but the MVP, the golden ball, is not really a big thing. But anyways, 2006 World Cup, the golden ball was won by Zinedine Zidane.
That's right.
So that kind of tells me it's like, well, that was voted before he was red carded in the final.
Yeah, because wasn't Cannavaro, didn't he finish second?
Yeah, I'm sure he finished second.
Golden ball voting, I think.
I think he was second. Buffon was third as the keeper, right? So, but that whole thing is and that was in extra time. So it's probably something similar where like they had to put it down because they had to know right away, and then this guy gets a red card in dramatic fashion. Like talk about a fail. Yeah. And you'd almost think in a moment like that they'd redo it, like figure something out.
It's like, oh shit, never mind.
Yeah, kind of arrow. Like, but
no, that makes a lot of sense. They probably do it the same way in soccer. I mean, I don't know exactly how they do it for those tournaments, but yeah, it is interesting because like the game, especially in hockey, could flip in a second.
Yeah.
So that's pretty crazy.
Fun stuff.
But all right, man. Let's move on now to the Leafs.
Do we have to?
I forgot that we still talk about
it's so much fun talking about other teams on a Sunday, Bruno. It's Canada Day weekend. We're talking about other teams. Why gotta spoil everything? Let's start talking about the blue and white team that we don't think is as good.
Oh, this Leaf team.
Yeah.
They still keep me up at night sometimes, Lepore.
Yeah.
Thinking
even
about
when they're out, they do annoying things.
But there was some news earlier this week in Leaf land. The Toronto Maple Leafs re-signed Wayne Simmonds to a 2-year deal for $900,000 a year. And then we also got some news regarding Frederik Andersen, where his agent has thrown it out there, and he told Pierre LeBrun that Andersen is interested in coming back to Toronto, which I think it makes sense. Like if I was Frederik Andersen, I'd also want to come back to the Leafs. But let's start things off, Lepore, with Wayne Simmonds.
Okay.
What is your take on re-signing the Wayne train?
I feel like I kind of see you grinning behind that microphone as you're like asking this question about Wayne Simmonds. Okay, I think I sit where a lot of Leafs fans sit with this deal because like there's like brain take and then there's like heart emotional take, because the brain take is $900,000 Who cares? He's in the depth. It's a contract you can bury. They say guys really like him in the room, and he's great on the bench. He had a rough season. He broke his wrist or his hand, so maybe we didn't even get to see all of Simmonds. And if that's the case, we got a great deal because he's $600,000 less than we had him for last year. So there's that side where it's like, yeah, it's all fine, whatever, move on. Let's not even talk about it. But then there's the hard emotional take that's like, no. And the reason why that side of me feels that way is because after what we went through in this playoffs, this team needs to be changed. This team needs to be changed. Something. Now, I'm not saying not bringing back Wayne Simmonds would have been that big change, but right now, I don't think Leafs fans want more of the same. And everyone was happy about the Spezza deal. Like we've talked about on this show, how like Spezza is the one exception to everything Toronto Maple Leafs right now. But as far as Wayne Simmonds goes, it still hurts. That playoff loss still hurts. And his performance wasn't good. And we talked about on this show that both Thornton and Simmonds, those two signings would be looked at in the future as failures. Because Simmonds, even if he was hurt and it didn't work out, well, it still sucked. It still didn't work out. So I shook my head when I heard about it. Like my initial thing, because your heart hits you first before your brain. So I shook my head and I was like, kind of like, oh God, in like 2 years. But I'm sure as like time moves forward and my brain side of it kicks in more, even more, I'll just look at it and be like, who cares? Like really, like similar to what I said about the Thornton deal last year. If you hate it, you're overthinking it. If you love it, you're overthinking it. It's a depth guy making $900,000. And based on how this team's built, that's how this team this is how this team has to be structured. It's how they have to do it, whether it's with guys we already have or with new guys. So I'll ask you, Bruno, what was your take when you heard the news about Simmonds?
Yeah, my initial reaction was the same. Like, come on, man.
Yeah,
like,
it's funny. It's funny how something so small is like so negative when it hit you, right?
And you know what? I've been on the record on this podcast saying that I don't think the Leafs should bring back Wayne Simmonds and Joe Thornton. Mm-hmm. And I think that they should completely commit to the true identity of this team, which is speed, skill, aggressive offensive play, explosiveness, guys in the bottom six that can create offense. And Wayne Simmonds was just not that dude this season. And the big thing that pissed me off with Wayne Simmonds actually wasn't his inability to score, because we know that he's obviously not the same guy he used to be in Philadelphia, where he was like among the league leaders in power play goals. This is a guy that doesn't have foot speed. His skating ability is basically zero at this point.
Yeah.
He can't move. He can't create offense. But what pissed me off the most was his inability to assert himself physically, and especially in the playoffs. Like, you know, when I saw like Josh Anderson taking runs at him and taking runs at other players, like those are kind of the things that I wanted to see from Wayne Simmonds. I wanted to see him shot out of a cannon and bring his physicality and, you know, affect the game in that way, especially in the playoffs. And I didn't see any of that.
Yeah.
That's why, you know, I said, you know, I don't know whether it was 2 or 3 shows ago that I said they shouldn't bring back Wayne Simmonds and Joe Thornton and just bring back or just fill the bottom six with players who can provide offense, create scoring chances. I mean, kind of in a way like Tampa's built at this point. And I know Tampa has some hard-nosed guys in that bottom six, like Barclay Goodrow and Pat Maroon and Blake Coleman, who can do a lot of things. But the more I thought about this signing, I came back and thought about it the same way as you, Lepore. It's just another body in the bottom six making $900,000. And I think the big reason they brought him back, and maybe they'll come out and say this at some point, is culture. Because
yeah, it's 100% why. 100%.
I think he was a big voice in that room. And you've heard the team talk about this in the past, specifically going back to last season, where no one on the bench was vocal. Like I'm talking about going back to 1920, the year they lost to Columbus in the qualifying round, where there wasn't that like vocal presence on the bench or that vocal presence in the locker room, right? Like that older guy, that elder statesman who's been around the block, who's gone through a lot of different things during his NHL career. And I think Wayne Simmonds really provided that for this team this season. And you could see like visibly on the bench, like he was that guy. Like I even think back to that time. Remember when Hyman scored that goal in the regular season and he was so fired up and he came to the bench and him and Simmonds had that big high five. So I
saw
think
that gif a few thousand times. Yeah,
exactly. Right. So I think, Leafs management thought about that and said, we need at least one of these guys in our bottom six. And listen, he's not going to do much. He's just another guy at the end of the day. But I think it was just a big move for the culture and the chemistry of that locker room to bring back Wayne Simmonds. And I think it's really as simple as that.
And but what you said, all of a snap attack if they bring Thornton back.
Yeah,
I don't care. I don't care what number, because Thornton's the name's too big. So you can't just bring him back and not care. It kind of commands attention and it's annoying. And that I do not want back. I do not want them to touch Joe Thornton.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. If Thornton comes back, I think that'll be a disaster, because with Simmonds, like they didn't have to start him out on the first line and give him all these opportunities. Whereas like Thornton comes in, it's like, oh, we're going to start him with Matthews and Marner on the first line. And he's going to get a look on the first power play unit because he's Joe Thornton. And like, no, that experiment failed and they better not bring him back. So I'm right there with you, Lepore, on that one.
Yeah, and we need the money for Corey Perry too, right? So
there it is. I was waiting for it, Lepore.
Let's do it, boys. Come on. You know you want to, Corey. Come on. You know you want to, Corey. Blue and white, 94. Come on.
Deep down, Corey Perry wants to be a Maple Leaf.
Oh, come on, Corey.
You just know he does. We're gonna speak it into existence, Lepore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it really is as simple as that with Wayne Simmonds. Let's shift our attention now before we wrap this up, Lepore, to Freddie Andersen.
Yeah.
Who, this season, it was very disappointing. Leaf fans were frustrated.
Horrible.
I think it got to a point where Leaf fans were just done with him. Like we had seen it time and time again. Him coming up short in the playoffs. Him not being as consistent as Leaf fans would have liked, specifically over the last couple of seasons where his play had dropped off from, the first 2 or 3 seasons of his Leafs tenure. And it got to a point where Jack Campbell took over the starting job. Jack Campbell put up big numbers. Jack Campbell was great in that Montreal series. Say what you want about the soft goal he let in Game 7 to Brendan Gallagher. He had a better save percentage than Carey Price in that series, which is insane looking back. But Lepore, what's your take on this Andersen situation? Like, do you think the Leafs should actually entertain this and bring back Freddie Andersen to share the net with Jack Campbell?
This is a loaded one, I think, because you can look at it so many ways. But again, like how the emotion kicks in, the heart kicks in, and your immediate reaction is no. Like, why would we do that? Right. But then the logic kicks in, and this is a cap world. So you ask yourself, is there a number and is there a term where you would be okay with it? And there's also the matter of Campbell only having 1 year left. So it's awkward because, well, what if you want to give him, say, 2 years? Like, how do you then approach the Campbell thing, or how does Campbell see that? It's about a number. It's about a number, and it's got to be low. It's got to be low. It's got to put this Leafs team in a position where value-wise they're getting like the best goaltending in the league, because that's kind of something we would need based on how this team is built to go deep. So I think it would have to be a low number. And I don't even know if I'd be willing to do the second year. I don't know how you feel on that, or how like people would approach that. I'm sure these conversations are going to be had, and who knows where their brain is at, even with Campbell. So my immediate reaction is no. And there is still that part of me that doesn't think it's going to happen, because the number I have anyway, and where I think they would be, he's not going to take. Like, if it's somewhere in the ballpark of, say, like a 1 year, $2 million, would Freddie take that? I don't know. But even then but even then you run the risk of, you don't have a goalie signed into the season after that. So would you do that? Or would you give Freddie like a 2 times? Do you want to give Freddie like a 2 times 2, or like a 3 over 2 years? Like would he take that? Like I don't know. Like him going back and even entertaining the conversation with the Leafs. I mean, he has to know where they're at. there's no way he's going in there and then with his agent saying, well, I made 5 last year, let's do it again. No, like he knows that's not even like a possibility at all. So I'd love to be a fly on the wall in those conversations. But and even me, like I don't even really have the number. But like I'll ask you, like, what deal, are you interested in at all? And if you are, at what number?
Yeah, Lepore, I think it would have to be a 1-year deal. I really do. Like, I don't think they should commit term to this guy. And especially with the way that Jack Campbell played last season, like, I don't think you can now turn to Freddie Andersen and give him, like, you know, a 4-year deal for $5 million. Like, this dude is coming off a 5-year, $25 million contract. But I agree with you, Lepore. Like, I think the number the Leafs are thinking, Freddie Andersen's not going to like it.
Yeah.
Because even though he sort of tanked his value, especially this season, there's going to be a team out there that is probably willing to give him, I don't want to say a long-term deal, that's probably willing to give even Freddie Andersen like a 3-year deal for $5 million.
Like $5 million a season, you think?
Yeah, potentially.
You think he still holds that card? Like
I think it's in play. Like, I don't think Freddie Andersen's like chopped liver by any means, right? Like, I think there's a team, like we just saw, for example, Matt Murray, you know, the contract that he just got from the Senators.
Yeah.
What was it, like 6 times,
4
$5.25 million a season or something and I get it. Matt Murray has 2 Stanley Cups and he's younger, and the Senators probably thought, oh, we can fix him and he'll become the Matt Murray of old who won back-to-back Stanley Cups. But I mean, yeah, maybe Freddie Andersen doesn't get $5 million from a team, but do you think a team would give him somewhere in the range of like $3 to $4 million over like a multi-year deal?
I don't know, man. Like, it seemed like where the goalie market was at last year, and seeing like who's available this year. I don't know. Like, I'd even be scared to give Freddie like a 3x3.
Really, eh?
Yeah, man, he hasn't been good, and he's been hurt. Like, there's too many question marks, man. And the thing too, like you mentioned, like the 1-year deal, it's like you have to be okay with not having a goalie, and I guess they can negotiate with Campbell like soon or now, soon. Obviously, guys are getting signed, now. But so like where they're at with that, they're gonna wait and see, and then even too, if they do sign him, is he? I guess that comes into play too. What I was gonna say is how they do see Freddie. Is it a share the net? Is it?
I think that's what they would want.
Yeah, like, so then that comes into the number. Then is it a backup? Like, because that's where I think the number would be on Toronto's end. It'd be like a backup number. Yeah, and he has to be okay with that, and that's where I don't think this is going to happen.
Yeah, just going back to Matt Murray for a second, who I mentioned. So he signed a 4-year, $25 million. I
was going to say, I think it was like
$6.25 million per year.
Man.
So I was a little off on that, but another way that I look at this, Lepore, is with Jack Campbell. And listen, I know he was incredible last season, but he has never been the starter over an 82-game season.
I'm afraid, Bruno.
So there, it's a little bit of a concern. And like, I'm just looking at Jack Campbell's, career numbers. The most games he's played in a season is 31 games. That was in 2019 with the LA Kings. So we have a goalie who's never played more than 31 games in an 82-game season in the NHL. So it's a little bit concerning, and I think that's why the Leafs are probably thinking, like, we don't want to go into this season and have Jack Campbell play like 58 games, approaching like 60 games. And I know, times have changed. You don't have like Marty Brodeur starting like 75 games and crazy things like that. But I think the Leafs are going into this season thinking we better have a solid option as our number 2 and even our number 3, because Jack Campbell, I don't know if we're going to get 40 games out of this guy. And, he dealt with injuries this season. So who knows? Like, I don't think this is a guy that you can rely on at this point to play an entire 82-game season. So maybe that's why they'd be interested in bringing back Freddie Andersen and have him share the net. But, it goes back to the whole thing. Like, does Freddie Andersen actually want that? Or does Freddie Andersen actually still think in his head that he can be a starter in the National Hockey League at this point? And honestly, Lepore, I think he believes that he can be a starter in the National Hockey League. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, I think the Leafs, if they're going to bring back Freddie, it has to be like a 1-year deal.
I guess there's injury factor too. I mean, no one knows the extent of those injuries better than the Toronto Maple Leafs. So, I mean, that's going to come into play as well. But, I mean, he's really liked in the room. He's got a lot of friends in there, but I really hope that doesn't like skew the decision in a way that it shouldn't go.
Exactly. I mean, there's going to be options out there. Then the Leafs signed that Swedish goalie as well.
Oh yeah, he won the elite league this year. Yeah, you know, it'd be great though, if the Leafs could develop a goalie.
Oh God,
since I was a kid, man.
For real, man.
Yeah, and they haven't developed a goalie.
Oh my, I know. Just thinking back, like who's the last goalie?
I think it was Potvin.
Who? Sorry,
I think it was Potvin.
Yeah, pretty much. Like wait, Reimer? I think the Leafs drafted Reimer.
I guess Reimer.
Well, Reimer's like. I mean, he wasn't Felix Potvin.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, I mean.
It depends who you ask. He's got a lot of love out there.
God, it's been a long time, man. That's sad.
Yeah,
that's really sad thinking about that. It's been this long since they've developed like an actual legit, like top 10 goalie in the league.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, what a mess.
Again, the title of the podcast.
Never ceases to amaze me.
Nope.
Gluttons for Punishment. It never ends. It's going to go on for the next 100 years. Us just suffering and eternal pain.
We're going to get off and we're all going to get an alert from Elliot Friedman that the Toronto Maple Leafs have extended Frederik Andersen to a 6 times 5-year deal.
Oh, man. That's the worst. Like when we finish recording the podcast and then we see like a tweet bomb from Chris Johnston or Elliot Friedman. And I'm like, damn it, Lepore.
Yeah. Start over.
But Lepore, before we wrap this thing up, any final thoughts on either the Leafs or the Stanley Cup Final?
I think we said all we needed to say about the Leafs because they don't deserve it. They don't deserve our time, even though we give them lots of it. Stanley Cup Final, like I said, I'm hoping for a really good Game 4. I hope Montreal comes out guns a-blazing. Entertain us. Let's get entertained. Montreal, give it your all, man. It's been a Cinderella run. If you've given your fans a lot of joy. Let them dance in the streets of Montreal, hopefully one more time, and let's push this series a little longer.
Yeah, you said it, Lepore. Like, all I want to see in this Game 4 is a great hockey game. Like, just give us an entertaining, passionate game from both teams, and whatever happens, happens. But like I said, you can put a fork in Montreal. They are done.
I'll ask you, Bruno. So we talked about betting before. So Montreal right now to win the Stanley Cup is 40-1. 40-1. How much money should I put down? $5?
Don't waste your money.
$5.
If you want to light a $5 bill on fire, go ahead. Just throw a 5 or a 10 on it, Lepore.
Okay.
But you're gonna be burning your money. I promise you.
There it is.
But I mean, it's 40-1. 40-1's 40-1. That's worth a $5 bet.
So if Montreal comes back and wins this series, and I don't make the bet, I can now blame you for talking me out of it, right?
Yes, 100%. You can come to me. Everyone can come to me with their pitchforks, and yeah, you can blame me on that. But no, I think it's over. Like I would be stunned beyond.
Stunn's not even the word.
Like it's beyond comprehension at this point if the Habs are actually able to pull off a 3-0 series comeback in the Stanley Cup Final against one of the best teams we've seen post-lockout.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, man. That's going to do it for episode 27 of the Gluttons for Punishment Podcast, or GFP, a Toronto Maple Leafs and NHL podcast hosted by Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno. If you enjoyed listening to the show today, it would be a big time help if you go on Apple Podcasts and give the GFP podcast a 5-star rating and review. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, we would appreciate it so much if you smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm, you subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you know exactly when the GFP podcast is posting some new content. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for us. For Michael Lepore and Anthony Bruno, enjoy Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Final, and we will see you in the next one.
Thanks, everyone.